Then the next point, let him not stay long in one city or town, more or less as the place deserveth, but not long. So he says, when you travel, see to it that you don't get stuck in one place. According to the importance of the place, according to what the place deserves. Suppose you go to a big city which is of great importance, of course you can spend a few extra days there. If you go to a place which doesn't have much to show you, to teach you, you can leave the place very soon. So, but whatever, he says, don't stay too long in any one city or town. Keep traveling so that you can see more places within a short span of time. And he says, nay, when he stayeth in one city or town, let him change his lodging from one end and part of the town to another, which is a great adamant of acquaintance. So he says, now suppose you are staying in the same place. Again, you can do something else to make your travel more fruitful. If you're staying in the same place, or if you decide to spend maybe a week in the same city, what you can do to gather variety and a variety of experiences is that you can keep changing your place of stay to different parts of the city. You stay in one part of the city today, then you can move away from there, and the next day, after you have seen all the places there, move to another part of the same city so that you can get a taste of what is happening there. And then on the third day, shift to another place. Okay, so that is another interesting suggestion that he gives. So keep moving around, which is a great adamant of acquaintance. So he says moving around, adamant, actually they use the word adamant for magnet. So he says that when you move around, you can make a lot of acquaintances, you can meet more people than staying in one place and just meeting people there. If you move to other places, different parts of the same city, you will come across people coming from various strata of society, and that would indeed increase your knowledge of that city. And so that is what he says there. Then let him sequester himself from the company of his countrymen and diet in such places where there is good company of the nation where he travelleth. So that's another very, I guess, a very practical thing that he's saying. When you go to another country, try not to spend your time with your own countrymen. That is, if you're going to Germany, for instance, try to make acquaintance with the German people. Don't hang around with Englishmen. Because what would happen is, then even in another country, it will be as though you are staying back in your own country. Because with this particular person, with your fellow countryman, you will only be talking about your country, you will be using your language, you will be eating the food that he recommends. So that will rob away the experience of kind of savoring the country to which you have gone. So he says, sequester yourself. Sequester means keep yourself away from the company of your own countrymen. And diet means eat. Go and have your food. Dine in such places where there is good company of the nation where he travelleth. So go to places where you get company of the people belonging to all the natives. Okay, people belonging to that country. And because then you will, if you have people from that country as your friends and acquaintances, they will recommend the food that is very special to their area, and then you will get a better idea of their cuisine and their culture, their traditions. You will miss out on all that if you hang around with your own countrymen. And then he says, let him, upon his removes from one place to another, procure recommendation to some person of quality residing in the place whither he removeth, that he may use his favour in those things he desireth to see or know. Thus he may abridge his travel with much profit. So that is again another thing, and this again reminds us that he is of a noble birth. And he says here that when you move from one place to another, upon his removes from one place to another, so of course wherever you go, you're supposed to make acquaintances, and that too acquaintance with important people. And when you go from one place, get a kind of a recommendation, some kind of a recommendation letter from this person, which can be given to a person in the place that you're going to visit, so that you will get some special treatment in the place you go. Okay, so because those days we know that there were no phone calls or internet or such facilities. All that people had was they could carry letters, and so get a recommendation from somebody important when you leave a place to somebody important in that place, so that you can use his favor in those things he desires to see or know. Because if there is something that you really want to see or know in that place, this recommendation would help you when you go there. Thus he may abridge his travel with much profit. So if you do all these things that I have said, says Bacon, you can make the maximum out of your travel. You can abridge his travel with much profit. So within a small, you know what an abridged version is. To abridge is to make something concise, small. You know that novels can be read in the abridged form. Same way, within a few days, you can gain much profit. You will not have to waste time. You will not have to wander around not knowing what to do if you're fully prepared in this manner. Now, in the next few lines, he tells us what kind of people we should meet when you go and make acquaintance. He told us about making acquaintances. What sort of people should one acquaint oneself with? As for the acquaintance which is to be sought in travel, that which is most of all profitable is acquaintance with the secretaries and employed men of ambassadors. So what sort of people do you make acquaintance with when you go to a place? So here you can see his recommendation: secretaries and employed men of ambassadors, people who occupy important positions in that country, like secretaries or people who are working in the embassy, the ambassadors and such people. For so in traveling in one country, he shall suck the experience of many. So what is the benefit that you derive from acquainting yourself to such people? Because these are people who have traveled a lot. Ambassadors and people working in embassies are people who have traveled to many places, and they can give you a lot of information. For so in traveling in one country, he shall suck the experience of many, because these friends can tell him about the other places that they have met. They can give him a lot of valuable information about the place where he is visiting now. And so that is why he says, make acquaintance with such people. Let him also see and visit eminent persons in all kinds, which are of great name abroad, that he may be able to tell how the life agreeth with the fame. So he says, another category of people you should meet are the eminent persons, the celebrities, we would say now, celebrities, or the famous people, eminent people in all kinds. Maybe eminent politicians, great writers, famous painters, actors, warriors, all these people. Make it a point to visit such people, which are of a great name abroad, who are very famous abroad in other countries. So that, now what is the purpose of this visit? So that when you meet these persons, these people, you can find out whether their reputation matches with their life, whether they are really worth the fame that they are enjoying all over the world or in other countries, so that he may be able to tell how the life agreeth with the fame, so that you can make sure through your personal experience whether this person is truly great, whether he truly deserves the fame that he is, the fame and the glory that he is basking in. Then he gives the next point. He gives something very, very relevant. He says, for quarrels, they are with care and discretion to be avoided. They are commonly for mistresses, healths, place and words. So he says, again, when you go to another place, a foreign country especially, see that you keep away from quarrels. Don't get into fights, because fighting in another place is very different from fighting in your own place, because you are totally in a new place. You may not have anybody to help you, so beware, don't get into quarrels. For quarrels, they are with care and discretion to be avoided. And why are quarrels, I mean, what results in quarrels generally? He gives us some common causes for quarrels. One, mistresses. Okay, men quarrel for women, in the name of women. And then healths, place and words. Now healths, again, health is toasting. When you drink, you toast to somebody's health. Maybe sometimes when you toast the health, you may hurt the ego of somebody, or some such thing might happen, and that might lead to some petty exchange of words which can kind of become a big quarrel. Then place in the sense, again, position. Somebody who thinks that he is important, if he is ignored, if he is not treated well, that can lead to ego clashes. And then words. If you're not careful with the kind of words that you use, if you speak impolitely to people, if you speak rudely to somebody, if you insult somebody, that also can lead to quarrels. Okay, so Bacon gives a very, very helpful kind of a tip about how a traveler should avoid getting into quarrels. And then he tells us, and let a man beware of how he keepeth company with choleric and quarrelsome persons, for they will engage him into their own quarrels. So he says, now when you choose companions in a foreign land, see to it that you avoid choleric men. Choleric men refer to men who are short-tempered, men who are highly irritable, who easily get provoked. So that kind of men are termed as choleric. Now the students of literature may know that in the Elizabethan period, and of course before that too, it was believed that a man's personality was influenced and determined by the four humors. And according to the four humors, a person could be sanguine, a choleric, phlegmatic, or melancholic. A sanguine person is generally a very easy-go-lucky person, social, happy, friendly. A choleric person, as I mentioned earlier, would be hot-tempered, highly irritable, and prone to fights, quick fights. And a melancholic person would be gloomy, always in a pensive mood. And a phlegmatic person would be relaxed and generally slow. Okay, so these are the four humors, and so Bacon advises the traveler not to keep company with choleric people. And what is the reason? Because they are quarrelsome and they will engage him in their own quarrels. They will get into trouble, they will start fights, and not only that, they will pull you also into their fights. So beware of such people. Do not make acquaintances with such people, or if at all you have made acquaintance with somebody of this character, see that you keep him at a distance so that he will not draw you into his troubles. When a traveler returns, okay, so this much about the things that you should be careful in the country you visit. And now in the concluding lines, Bacon tells us about what we should do when we come back home. You have traveled to another place and now you're back home, and what should you do once you come there? When a traveler returneth home, let him not leave the countries where he hath travelled altogether behind him, but maintain a correspondence by letters with those of his acquaintances which are of most worth. So once you return home, don't forget the country altogether. Keep some memories with you. Don't just forget completely the place you have visited. And again, see that you maintain a correspondence with at least people who are worth. There you can see the importance that Bacon gives to the class and the position of people. So he says, don't lose contact with people of importance that you have visited, because we cannot say when you will need their help again. So always keep in touch with them. So by letters, maintain a correspondence by letters with those of his acquaintance which are of most worth. You don't have to maintain acquaintance with all sorts of people that you have met, but at least the important people, see that you keep in touch with them. And let his travel appear rather in his discourse than in his apparel or gesture. So he says, make known that you have traveled to another country only in your discourse, in your thoughts, in your words, in your conversation, not in your apparel or gesture. That is, don't dress like a foreigner when you go back home. Don't behave like a foreigner, in the sense, don't use gestures. You know, some people, when they spend even few months in another country, when they come back, they would speak like they had been living there forever. They would speak with a very accented tone. Of course, that would happen if you spend a long time in another place, because your language and your intonation and your accent and everything will be affected. But there are some people who go somewhere and come back and immediately they take on airs, and so they would immediately change their apparel and gesture, a kind of show off. So he says, don't do that. Of course, your thought, because travel is always an experience, your thoughts would have been changed. You might have gained new insights from your travel. There is no harm in talking about such things, but don't make it a show in your apparel or gesture. And in his discourse, let him be rather advised in his answers than forward to tell stories. And again, when he speaks about his experiences in the foreign land, let him not be forward in telling stories. Let him not talk too much. Instead, let him be rather advised in his answers. When somebody asks you, talk only when you are talked to. Don't volunteer a lot of information. If somebody asks you something, be advised in your answers, in the sense, think a moment before you answer. So let him be rather advised in his answers than forward to tell stories, because you would find it boring. You know, you must have met people like that who have traveled somewhere and they come back and they keep boasting about that place where they had visited. They keep saying that that's such a wonderful country and this country is nothing compared to that. So that would irritate people. So he says, don't be too forward in telling stories. Instead, think before you speak. And let it appear that he doth not change his country manners for those of foreign parts. So don't give the appearance that you have forgotten your country manners and all your basic nature, and you have suddenly become a foreigner. Don't give that feeling to the others. Remain or retain the qualities that make you a citizen of your city or a person who belongs to your nation. But only prick in some flowers of that he hath learned abroad into the customs of his own country. So he says, just take, suppose you have seen something really wonderful there in another country, just choose only that quality, that good trait, and you try to practice it here. Don't overdo it. So that's why, but only prick in some flowers of that he hath learned abroad into the customs of his own country. Retain your own customs, just add some good things that you have observed in other countries. Don't behave as though you have forgotten your whole country and its culture. Okay, so that is how the essay of travel ends. And so this is a very interesting essay, isn't it? Because now a lot of people travel these days, and again people have started, compared to earlier days, now more people have started traveling alone. And so I guess most of the things that Bacon tells us, of course, we can forget all that he tells about meeting princes and ambassadors and all those things. But other than that, he has given us a lot of valuable information about keeping a diary, about making preparations in advance before you go to a place, especially if you're traveling alone and if you're planning on a long trip. It's always good that you do some homework, read about that place, learn something about the language of that place, prepare a list of places that you're going to visit, of the food that you want to eat there. So it is always nice to be prepared. It may not always be easy to find a companion, like Bacon says, but then be prepared well in advance when you start off on a journey. So I hope you enjoyed this essay, and this is supposed to be one of the simplest essays of Bacon. Usually, you know that Bacon's essays abound in Latinisms. He borrows a lot of information from other areas of knowledge. He gives us quotations. He throws in a lot of names of various people. But here in this essay, nothing of that sort is there, and that is why it is supposed to be a very simple essay. So now that you have listened to the lecture, I'm sure that reading it once again would make you well acquainted with this essay of travel.